Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is different than gender.
Why
and I do believe that women's sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Ms. Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
All right, folks, welcome back to KRIX. Before we jump in, hit that like button, subscribe, and join the channel if you enjoy honest commentary without the political gymnastics. Because today we've got a moment in Congress that honestly feels like one of those moments where someone asks a very simple question and suddenly nobody in the room remembers how to answer. Senator Ted Cruz asked one basic question. Is there a difference between men and women? Sounds like something a fifth grader could answer in about 2 seconds. But what happened next had the entire hearing twisting itself into knots. Let's talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Title IX was a landmark civil rights law. It helped create the incredible breadth of women's sports and girls' sports that we see across the country. I believe in girls' sports. I believe in women's sports. I'm the proud father of 2 daughters who are both athletes. I think participating in competitive sports is a wonderful thing for a young girl. I think it is a wonderful thing for a woman. And I think, unfortunately, today's Democrat Party has decided that women's sports and girls' sports no longer matters. And they're willing to push radical legislation designed to destroy girls' sports and women's sports. Ms. Gaines, I want to thank you for your courage. You are relatively young, but you have demonstrated incredible courage. And because you have dared to speak up, you have been demonized, you have been vilified. I saw when you were attacked by a leftist mob at San Francisco State University for daring to speak up. You had an incredible record as a swimmer at the University of Kentucky. You were a 2-time NCAA All-American. You were a 5-time SEC champion. You're an SEC record holder and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. But yet on March 27th, 2022, something changed. What happened on March 17th, 2022?
That's when Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle and again resulted in a tie.
And so you tied. What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have 1 trophy, therefore we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this and I say, why? And at first, I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled on his words. He didn't know how to answer this. And at first he's, well, we're just doing this in chronological order. To which I further pressed and I said, okay, well, what are you being chronological about? Because we tied. And if we're doing this off alphabetical order, G comes before T. So what are you being chronological about? To which this wasn't a script they had prepared for him. And he actually appreciated his honesty. He did say, we have to give the trophy for Leah because Leah has to have it for pictures. They've made that clear. Leah has to have the trophy for pictures. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give yours back. You have to go home empty-handed. Leah Thomas takes the trophy home. End of story.
Now, let me ask you, as someone who's competed at the elite level, in your experience, is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learned this at a very young age, watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make will overcome that male advantage, especially in sports like swimming where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing, but when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women...
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
What I can say is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition happened,
I'm going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes-no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is that a yes? So I'm trying to get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech. Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're not answering that. Let me ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is different than gender.
Why
and I do believe
why
that
do
women's sports have a great value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter into the record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100-meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men. If the radical Democrat agenda to destroy girls' sports and women's sports succeeds, little girls will not have a chance to compete. So I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record.
Without objection. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues,
So the video we're reacting to today shows Senator Ted Cruz questioning the president of the Human Rights Campaign during a Senate hearing about women's sports. Now, first, Cruz opens by talking about Title IX. For those who don't know, Title IX was one of the biggest civil rights laws for women in sports. It's the reason girls across America can compete in athletics, get scholarships, and build careers in sports. Before that law, women simply didn't have those opportunities. Cruz also brings up Riley Gaines, a former NCAA swimmer from the University of Kentucky. Gaines had an incredible swimming career. She was an All-American swimmer, an SEC champion, and even qualified for Olympic trials. But the moment that changed everything for her happened in 2022, when she competed against swimmer Leah Thomas. During that NCAA event, Gaines tied with Thomas in a race. In normal sports logic, if two athletes tie, they both receive the same recognition. That's the whole point of a tie. But according to Gaines' testimony, officials told her there was only one trophy and that it had to go to Thomas for the photos. She was told she could pose with the trophy briefly, but she would have to give it back afterward and leave without it. Now, think about that for a moment. Two athletes tie, but only one gets the trophy to take home. That moment became a major flashpoint in the national debate about fairness in women's sports. Then Cruz asks what should be one of the simplest questions imaginable. He asks whether there is a biological difference between men and women. Gaines answers clearly. She explains that male puberty creates physical advantages that cannot be reversed. Things like lung capacity, bone structure, muscle density, and height all play a role in athletic performance. These aren't political talking points. They are biological realities recognized in sports science. Then Cruz turns to the Human Rights Campaign president and asks the same question. And this is where the moment gets interesting. Instead of answering yes or no, the response turns into a long explanation about gender definitions and NCAA policies. Cruz keeps asking the same basic question again and again. Is there a difference between men and women? And the answer never really comes. Now, regardless of where people fall politically, the core issue here is fairness and competition. Women's sports were created because biological differences matter in athletics. If those differences didn't exist, there would never have been separate categories in the first place. Cruz even cites research showing that top female track records have been beaten by large numbers of male athletes and even teenage boys in the same events. That's not meant as disrespect to female athletes. It actually highlights just how incredible elite women athletes are within their own category. The point is that sports rely on competitive fairness. Weight classes exist in boxing. Age divisions exist in youth sports. Categories exist because they create a level playing field. The debate we're seeing now is about where those lines should be drawn. But what stood out most in this hearing wasn't just the policy debate. It was how difficult it seemed for someone to answer a basic biological question in front of Congress. And that's why moments like this go viral. Not because they're complicated, but because sometimes the simplest questions reveal the biggest disagreements. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more reactions like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.